here essentially are going to discuss is the latest coming from the Supreme Court. Now, the Apex Court today rejected a batch of petitions that sought 100% cross-verification of vote count in electronic voting machines, our EVMs, with the voter verifiable paper audit trail, VVPAT. For those of you go with this particular term on various blogs on social media. These are these paper slips that are deposited by the EVMs after one casts their vote. The main opinion of Justice Sanjiv Khanna was concurred with by Justice Dipankar Datta in a separate opinion. Now, the pronouncement of the verdict has interestingly coincided with the second phase of polling for the general elections to the Lok Sabha. Ashok, Justice Dipankar Datta said, while balanced perspective is important, but blindly doubting a system can breed skepticism, and thus meaningful criticism is needed. Be it judiciary, legislature, etc., democracy is all about maintaining harmony and trust among all the pillars. But it has rejected all those batch of petitions seeking 100% cross-verification. What were some of the main arguments that were put forth? We remember the Election Commission official, was also made to stand there inside the courtroom. He was asked some grueling questions. But we're also told that there is a reaction coming across from the lawyer right outside the Supreme Court. Let's first listen into that, and then we'll come back to Ashok from there.
Today the Supreme Court delivered its judgment on EVM and VVPAT. Our demand was that because the EVMs have a programmable memory and therefore can be manipulated, so in order to avoid public apprehension about the integrity of the EVMs, one of the three things could be done. Either you go back to paper ballots, or you give the VVPAT slip in the hands of the voter, which can be put in the ballot box and then counted, or in the alternative, the black glass of the VVPAT machine should be made transparent, or at least the light should remain on for all the time, so that people can see what is happening inside the VVPAT, and also 100% counting of the VVPAT slips. The court has not accepted our demands, but has directed the Election Commission to examine that if barcodes can be put on the ballot, on the VVPAT slips, so that the VVPAT slips can be mechanically counted by a counting machine. Also, secondly, they have said that the symbol loading unit, which loads the symbol constituency by constituency, should be sealed and kept available for at least 45 days after the election. Thirdly, they have said that every candidate who comes second or third can make a demand for examining the burnt memory of the EVM, and a technical expert team of the Election Commission will have to examine that, but the cost of that will have to be paid by the candidate. With these directions, the court has disposed of these petitions.
Supreme Court says that microcontrollers are agnostic. Now, all those options that were available in front of the Supreme Court to decide upon, Ashok, those were put forth furiously. But how are you looking at how the Supreme Court has now dealt with this issue?
Well, it's not surprising that the Supreme Court has decided to reject this demand. Number one, for 100% cross-verification of the votes cast on EVM and the paper trail. Now, this is a humongous exercise. If you look at it, this was a apprehension expressed by the Supreme Court also, saying that number one, as far as these general elections are concerned, the process is already underway. But if they were to be introduced, it would be a humongous exercise. Number two, you have to understand is that this petition was filed by ADR, which is Association for Democratic Reforms, which has been in the forefront of filing petitions seeking election reforms in the country. Now, ADR in its petition cast doubt on the EVMs, and they said that there is a possibility that the EVMs can be hacked, programmed by the governments in power, and there is a need to have a closer look at it. And how do you have a closer look at it? First option was either they do away with the EVMs, go back to the paper ballot system. And I remember when this whole paper ballot idea was floated in the court, Justice Khanna laughed it off, saying that, look, we are more than 60 years old and we know how the paper ballot system has worked in the last 60 years. The second thing which was argued by ADR was that, look, what can be done is that these VVPAT slips can be given to the voter can see and cross-verify whether the vote cast by him or her on the EVM is correct, and then deposit that paper slip into a ballot box. And the third alternative which was given was that, look, if nothing of this can happen, then at least ensure that in a VVPAT there is a opaque glass which lights up only for 7 seconds after the vote is cast, so that the voter can see that the vote has been recorded correctly. So they said that, like, do away with this opaque glass, have a transparent glass. But today, Supreme Court rejected all their demands, and a very interesting observation was made by Justice Dipankar Datta, who delivered a concurring verdict, and he said, if you blindly distrust a system, it will lead to unwarranted skepticism. So he is saying that all these doubts which have been raised on EVMs is unwarranted, number one. Number two, it's not as if everything is all right. Even the Supreme Court has given 2 sets of directions just to ensure that the whole process of voting and counting is foolproof. So firstly, they said that, look, as far as the VVPATs are concerned, after the election and the voting concludes, you will seal the VVPAT. The seal will have signatures of the candidates who are contesting the elections, and put this VVPAT in the strong room for 45 days. The second direction is rather more important, where the Supreme Court is saying that, look, if number one, that you control unit, the ballot unit and VVPAT, all of them have to be preserved for 45 days. But during this 45 days or within 7 days of casting of vote, if any candidate who's at number 2 and 3 feels that there was tampering in the EVMs, can raise the issue. And the EC will be mandated to get those machines examined by engineers. But the cost of bearing, of rechecking and cross-verification will have to be borne by the candidates. Now, this is very important, considering that till now, there is no such provision under the Representation of People's Act which gives the candidates the power to seek examination or re-examination of the EVMs after the votes have been cast.
All right then. Many thanks, Ashok, for summing all of that up. The 2 directions that the bench have now passed. The first, on completion of symbol loading process in VVPATs undertaken on or after the 1st of May. The symbol loading units, the SLUs, a major component of the electronic voting machine, shall be sealed and secured in container, and the sealed container would be kept in strong room along with EVMs for at least 45 days post the results. And the second directive, like Ashok mentioned, is that the burnt memory semi-controllers in 5% EVMs, that is the ballot unit, control unit and the VVPAT slip per assembly segment of the Parliament constituency shall be checked and verified by a team of engineers from the EVM manufacturers. A big decision coming from the Apex Court, coinciding with the second phase of the Lok Sabha polls 2024.